So I work at the Utah State Prison. I started as a prison guard working in the mental health unit. I did that for 6 years. Then I promoted to sergeant, and I moved to the gang unit and the intake unit. Ran those for a little while. Now I currently run all of the prison's six libraries. I do that. I have taught some creating writing classes to the inmates, and I also am in charge of the prison reading for the blind program, where and we have a, studio set up with recording studios. We got about 20 recording studios, and the inmates they read books, record them kind of like audible.com does. But for any blind person that requests say a magazine that they want read to them, or a really rare book that Audible is not going to put out, or a lot of religious books that Audible doesn't do. But if any blind person requests a book through our program, one of the inmates reads it, and it is the single largest reading for the blind program in the world. It even surpasses the one at the Utah State Prison that I'm in charge of, even surpasses the one at the Library of Congress in Washington. And we serve people all over the country, and it's a good job for the inmates, and a lot of them are very good readers. The reason I'm starting the video with this information is because I run the libraries at the prison, and the libraries, we've got 6 of them in the gang unit, the mental health unit, the drug rehab unit, the general population, girls unit, you name it. We got a library there, and the inmates read a lot. They also tend to steal books. They thieve the books, they theft the books, they steal them, they take them to themselves, they don't return them, they loan them to their buddies, they parole out of prison with them, the books just go. And I gotta tell you, the number one stolen book at the Utah State Prison, it's a book that I cannot keep in stock enough. Every one of my libraries, I try to keep 5 or 6 copies, but they eventually get stolen. And that is Swan Song by Robert McCammon. It is the most popular book with prison inmates in the Utah State Prison, and I would have to say, likely my prison is not the only prison that has this problem with the Swan Song book. For some reason, felons love Swan Song. It is the most requested book, the most stolen book by far. The second most stolen series would be the Bernard Cornwell Viking series, 10 books. The Saxon Tales, I think it's maybe called. I can't remember. But those get stolen a lot too. But nothing can comparison to Swan Song. Now, I read this a long time ago when I was in college. I saw how popular it was at the prison, and so I decided to reread it. I've always been a collector of Robert McCammon's books. In fact, you can see behind me all of them. Well, the cat just knocked down everything in the kitchen. I don't know if you heard that. But anyway, I've got a collection of all the Robert McCammon books behind me. I've been collecting them for a long time. Paperbacks, everything that he's done. I have everything that he's written. In fact, just so you know, I've met Robert McCammon a couple times, and see, this is my copy of the 5. And he signed every book that I've ever given him. He signed all of them. I think every book in my collection has been signed. This is Mr. Slaughter. He signed that one to me also. I highly recommend that if you can get a chance to meet any author, you meet them. I do think that Robert McCammon is one of the better writers, just in general, on the planet. I think his stuff is magnificent. His novel Boy's Life right there is probably in my top 5 favorite novels of all time, and I think it's a perfect book. One of the books I wish I'd written. Swan Song, though, was a book I read a long time ago. I remember enjoying it okay. I started working in the prison libraries and seeing just how much the inmates loved it. And so I thought I would give it a reread. I listened to most of it on Audible on a trip I took to California from Salt Lake City to San Francisco. I listened to a good portion of it in the car, and then I read. I followed along, tried to follow along in the book, reading it word for word in the book when I got home the rest of the way, and I found that I still enjoyed it. It's still a great book. It's a slice of Americana. It won the 1988 Bram Stoker Award for horror, the best horror novel in the world. It's been either PBS or NPR did a top 100 greatest American novels ever written, and this actually landed on that list as one of the top 100 greatest American novels ever written. And I can't remember if that was NPR or PBS that put that out. You guys go Google that. I mean, I ain't got time to Google everything for these videos and get everything accurate. If you want to know if it was NPR or PBS, it's on Google. Everything's on Google. Anyway, so what's the allure of Swan Song to PBS, NPR, and every inmate that I ever have run across at the Utah State Prison? I honestly don't know. I recommend The Stand. Gets compared to Stephen King's The Stand just because of the size of it, and it's an apocalyptic novel, where the world is, being destroyed one person at a time very quickly, and the America's a wasteland. All of that, it gets compared to The Stand a lot. I do think that The Stand is a better novel than this one, but this is still a great novel. I think the inmates like it just because it's bloody fun. It's a bloody fun book, and it's got some gore. It's probably more gory than The Stand. It's probably more gory than anything Stephen King has done. You can tell when Robert McCammon was writing this that he was having a blast writing it. It's like he's like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to throw caution to the wind, and I'm not going to be held back by anything. If I've got a crazy idea, I'm going to stick it in this book and I'm not going to care. And that really comes through in the book. So the basic setup is apocalyptic. It's an apocalyptic world. Russia and the United States have a nuclear war, and everything gets blown up, and it's a nuclear wasteland, and there's very few survivors. Just kind of like The Stand is about, Stephen King's The Stand is about a plague that wipes out humanity, and there's very few survivors scattered across the United States, and they kind of have to journey across the United States to get to a spot. In The Stand, they're all going to Las Vegas. I'm not going to spoil things for the Swan Song, but we've got a character scattered all over across like in Kansas. We have the pro wrestler who rescues during the first nuclear strike. He rescues a young girl named Sue Wanda, who eventually becomes our Swan in Swan Song. She's got magical powers. We find out slowly through the course of the book that she's got magical powers, and she becomes the Swan of the Swan Song. And that's in Kansas. In New York City, we've got Sister Creep. She's a homeless woman, and she's kind of fleeing New York City, and she is being chased by the guy, I think his name is the Scarlet One-Eyed Man, or it's escaping me. Anyway, the One-Eyed Scarlet Man, or something like that, the man with one scarlet eye. He's kind of like Stephen King's Randall Flagg that he's the baddie in The Stand that chases everybody across the country. Well, it's the Scarlet One-Eyed Man, or whatever it's called. He's chasing Sister Creep. And then in Utah, we have, at least I think it's Utah, we have Roland, a little kid, a 13-year-old boy who gets kind of taken up with some roving survivalist type people. And anyway, that's the basis of the story. All of the characters, and there's a lot of them, a lot more than I just mentioned, and they're all just crazy, wacky, just like in The Stand, they're just crazy, wacky characters. And they journey across the country, and the girl Swan, who is the Swan Song, She plays a huge important role, and it's just bloody good fun. That's all I can say. You know, every one of Robert McCammon's books back here is kind of a horror novel. He's got Boy's Life and Blue World, and then he's got his mystery series, which comprises Speaks the Nightbird, Queen of Bedlam, Providence Rider, Cardinal Black. There's a whole bunch of those. Those are mystery novels that are set in sort of Sleepy Hollow type old East Coast. I can't remember if it's since 17th century America. And they're mystery novels, and with the supernatural bent. They're kind of the X-Files for the revolutionary times, and they're all good. They're good. They're great. One of my other favorite, and I'll try to review a lot of these as time goes by over the years. The one up above me, Stinger. It's the first one. It's the first Robert McCammon book I ever read when I was a teenager, and I thought it was fantastic. Well, I won't. We'll get to that review later. But all of his books, I have signed copies of them. I've met him 2 times. The World Horror Convention was held in Salt Lake City 2 years in a row, and he came to one of those, and I think he came to both of those. That's where I met him twice. And just a great guy. Met him, talked to him. He signed some books for our state prison collection. I've got a big signed collection of books at the state prison, and I can so as far as reviews go, I review books and I give a 1 to 10 rating, 10 being the best. I tend to rate things high. If there's a book I don't like, I just don't rate it. I give Swan Song, though I don't think it's as good as The Stand. It's Robert McCammon is every bit as good of a writer as Stephen King. In fact, I think if you were to ask most horror fans, I think they would rank Stephen King number 1, Robert McCammon number 2, Dean Koontz number 3, yada, yada, yada down the road. Robert McCammon is one of the best. Criminals love his stuff so much that they will actually steal it from a prison library, one copy after another, after another, after another, and after another for years and years and years, and I just can't keep enough of them in. My score for this is a good, solid 8.5 out of 10. I think it's that solid of a book. I think everybody that reads it will enjoy it. For my money, though, if you want to read the best Robert McCammon book ever written, read Boy's Life, that one right there. Everything he's done is fantastic, though. If you've read everything Stephen King has done and you want to find a new horror novel that's or horror writer that's comparable to Stephen King, look at Robert McCammon. He's got a good 20 to 30 books in print. I have them all. They're sitting behind me. I showed you some of the ones that I've had signed. I can't recommend it enough. Please look for Robert McCammon books in bookstores and on Amazon. And I hope you all have a good day, and I will see you all later.